Before we begin the episode, I would like to thank our sponsor, Chin Up Goggles, the new generation of vision training. Its simplistic design eliminates downward vision, improving a player's spatial awareness, anticipation, skill acquisition and execution. The findings have been supported by scientific research in CIT, now MTU. Be sure to visit chinupgoggles.com for more. Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 91, I'm delighted to be joined by the Irish Under-16 girls soccer head coach and senior women's assistant coach Tom Elmes. Tom has also taken charge of Wexford Youths senior women's team after retiring from his own playing career. It was a pleasure recording with Tom, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi Tom, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Hiya, thanks Ola, thanks for having me.
Before we get into everything, would you mind giving a quick elevator pitch to the listeners who might not know who you are?
Yes, my name's Tom Elmes. I'm the current women's under-16 head coach for the FEI, and I'm also the women's assistant senior coach with under Vera Powell.
Very good. For you, at what stage did you get into coaching? What was the kind of drive there? How did you get into coaching, basically?
It kind of followed on from playing, really. There was an opportunity to work with an underage team at the club I was with. And I took that opportunity and just really enjoyed it. And it kind of grew and developed from there.
And do you think to be an elite coach, do you have to have played the sport you're in? And it's not just specific to football. Do you think there's kind of these intangible things that you need as a coach that you've learned from playing, or can somebody that hasn't played the sport come in and start coaching maybe and build their way up to an elite level? What do you think?
Yeah, I think obviously there are certain benefits to having played the game, certain understandings of the game, but I think you can have these experiences, but unless you have the ability to develop the knowledge and share that knowledge and understand how that process works. Then it's more beneficial really to make sure that people are educated in the right way, that we can develop players.
Mm-hmm. Was there any particular lessons you brought in from your playing days into coaching? Is there anything that you've kind of brought along with you that you're trying to instill in your players now that you've learned from playing the game?
I think with one of the biggest lessons, I suppose, anyone will learn is hard work. And hard work and attitude. At the end of the day, your attitude defines who you are, and it's so much more important than anything else when it comes down to it. So that'd be one thing I think. After you've done all the talking, that's the one thing it comes down to, I believe.
You mentioned there the under-16 girls, and we've mentioned Trish Nolan. Shout out to her. How do you build a management team around you when you have a squad? What do you look for in your assistants when you're building this team to try and nurture a young group of players and bring them through the initial ranks of the Irish setups?
First of all, you're looking for people that have their own strengths, have their own qualities, that they're going to bring something to the group, to the management group. I think we have a very good group at the moment, and that is the reason why is everyone's good, good levels of self-awareness of what we're capable of and what our strengths are, but also what areas we might not be so strong in, and where others can support you and help you in that. And I think you really, really need that. We need to hold each other accountable at times, question what we do, why we do it, and only to really bring the best out in each other, and making sure we all share the same common goal. What we're doing is for one reason: is to develop players. Is to develop them within the women's under-16 program, and send them on into the 17s as best prepared as we can. And I think once we all share that goal, once we're all open and honest with each other, and there's trust there, and everyone has them strengths that they bring to the table, you start to have a really good group around you.
How do you measure their development? Is there a particular way that you like to see players evolve, or is it just at the end of the year you kind of evaluate how they've improved? How do you measure that development stage, because it'll be so different for every single player and every single individual?
Absolutely. And their development might not have projected as much as they might have felt it might during them that year that they're with us, but that doesn't mean we're not aware that things might come around the corner. Football's like that, development's like that. So I think, you know, when they come into us, it's kind of the first time they're really kind of exposed to principles, to structures and systems and so on. And we look to just develop their understanding. Can we teach them how to reflect on their performances? Can we get them to understand some of our team tasks, how it might look if we're defending, how it might look how we attack, and start to kind of embed these principles into the players, and obviously then when we're observing them in games, we can see their understanding, and the understanding of the game is really, really important now, and how they make decisions, how they communicate with each other. So we're really looking at those foundations. Obviously, you look at how they might execute some of their actions and so on, but for us, that's not what we're really, that will come, that comes in time. But the sooner we can develop the communication of the individual and the team, we're really positive about kind of supporting the players in that area. Would be a key area for us. Yeah.
How do you help the girls that might find the jump a little bit difficult? For example, they're coming from a club where they're probably, the best player there for a while, or their region, they're well known, and now they're coming up against the best players in the country at their age, and they might not have been exposed to certain principles that you're bringing in, that high level, high intensity training. How do you help them bridge the gap, particularly maybe when they're struggling and, maybe finding it very difficult to engage in that high level training?
So when we come in for individual sessions, we keep an extended group of players. That could be between 30 and 40 players that come in, and there'll also be a list of players after that we're aware of, and we monitor back with their clubs and so on. But we always bring that group in, and they take part in a lot of the sessions. But when we go into a camp, we are restricted to 20 players, and we do have to make those decisions. And what we do with the players that, they might not make that 20, it's important that we communicate with them openly and honestly about their performance and how they're developing, and what key areas of their game we feel they really need to concentrate on and work on. But most importantly is our relationship with the clubs. And to be honest, it's been really positive this year. A lot of the clubs take on the feedback really well. Because it's a difficult one for them to manage, because all of a sudden they've got to work with a player who in their club environment is probably their strongest player. But we sometimes forget that these players are sometimes the ones that need the most coaching. Because I think at club level we can get lost and think we need to bring everyone up to the standard of that player, whereas at the next level up, we need to bring them up again to the standard of an international player. And that can be the challenge, but I have to say a lot of the coaches we're working with really understand that, and they're really supportive with it. So I think once we're very open and honest with the player, most of them take the feedback really well, and they do. And we've had a couple of examples of players who might have been in the extended group earlier in the year, and they have gone off and worked hard on certain aspects of their game, worked hard with their club, and then when we come back in, they might not get selected for a camp. But when they come back into the extended group and you see how they perform, you can't help but invite them into the next camp. And that's the way the game is. Everyone develops at different rates. But, you soon see those that have an attitude and don't respond well to the criticism or the constructive criticism that you might be offering them. It only sees them fall back even further.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, actually. I would never have thought of that, the elite player needing even more coaching. That's an interesting point there. Yeah. Out of interest, with any team you've worked with, it's kind of a topic that's come up a lot. How do you balance improving an individual player and the rest of the group? And the way I'm thinking of it is when you're maybe with Wexford Youths or with the senior team, like there's so many different things that people need to work on, and when you have maybe a small window for an international camp, how do you balance improving their individual abilities as well as improving the whole team?
Yeah, I think the environment we create when they come into a training session or into a camp, we create an environment where the players are under a lot of pressure. We encourage them to play with pressure, but we try and put them under as much pressure, and that's how we structure our sessions, how we structure our games. Everything that comes down to the size of the area that you work in. So that really brings on the development of the individual, how they can respond under pressure, how they can make quicker decisions, and they can communicate better with the team around them. So that really supports their individual development. Regards then the team, everything we do comes back to the needs of the team and the task of the team. What are we trying to achieve as a team? And we always bring our session comes back down from that. But then the way we work on that task and on that objective, the environment we create really encourages the development of the individual player as well.
Okay, interesting. Out of interest, with your sessions, how much of it do you practice the basics, or is it when you get to your level, it's, well, they have the basics anyway? Like, how do you structure that? How do you balance that getting into the basics as well as that high pressure environment that you've created?
I think whether it's the under 16s I'm working with or the seniors, you're always fine tuning the basics, brilliant basics all the time. You can't underestimate how important it is to be brilliant at the basics. And again, players are always given an opportunity in training to work on those, and you don't take it for granted. I think it's so important. You don't overlook it. I think sometimes we can get caught up in environments where it's a lot stop, stand still, and there's a lot of talking from the coach. Whereas I think we need to get that balance of getting the right information, but allowing the players to play as much as possible. And again, fine tuning those basic skills.
When you're with a team for so little, how do you balance, and try to instill a style of play that, as opposed to a club team, you might see 2 or 3 times a week? How big of a challenge is that for you when you only see players maybe a couple of times a year?
Yeah. So I think look, obviously it's my first year in the program, and I think one of the things that repetition of information, and obviously the terminology we use. So really keeping it simple. We've got, the resources we have in terms of video analysis. We have classroom time when we are with the players. So if we come in, obviously we don't get much time with them. We do come in, we have a full day, or we could be for 2 days, 3 days. These are the kind of smaller camps, and we really get the benefit of having classroom time. And we do a lot of breakout sessions. So we might bring the players in with their units. So that could be the defenders, midfielders, attackers, and we do individual work with them. But we do individual work with them, helping them to understand that sometimes with defenders, it's not just defending, it's what their role is if we're attacking in the final third and what that might look like. So we do get a lot of time to work on those things. We set homework tasks, so they all have access to Huddle, which is our online analysis. And they're able to reflect on their own performances in the sessions and games. So we give them little tasks on find 2 positives, find 2 areas for improvement, and they all come back with them. And all these little jobs, all these little workshops that we're doing with them, they're always looking at the performance and bringing it back to the objectives of the team, but also within the team then what their roles and responsibilities are through the different functions. So we get them to understand it with simplicity. But also the resources that we have are very beneficial as well.
With the senior team, with the calibre player that is there, Katie McCabe, Denise O'Sullivan, the list goes on, is there anything you've learned from them? Is there anything that they've kind of taught you or you've picked up from being there and being their presence and see how they approach the game?
Yeah, I think just their overall professionalism. It's great to see that, the female game now, as it's growing the way it is, the professionalism that the girls bring in is top class. But also as well is their constant reflection on what we're doing as a team and how we can do it better, and their feedback with the staff and stuff like that. It's really, really good to see that we really are working together, and they feed back what they see, and it helps us to form an even stronger, better plan and implement it as best as we can.
Mm-hmm. How do you turn a great bunch of players, the names I've just mentioned, into a team, into that 11-man, team on the pitch, plus all the game changers, I now call them, not subs?
Yeah.
How do you bring in all of that talent into one place and try to make it work together as a team?
I think like you said, the key word that you keep mentioning is team, and people have to remember that that's what it's about. If you have a group of individuals, you don't have a team. And that's what's really important. They have to share the same goal. They have to have direction, and they have to share the same values. And at the moment, I think we're ticking a lot of these boxes with the senior team, and we're trying to educate the younger players to understand that these are the components that are really, really important as you do progress through the age groups. But with the senior team at the moment, I think everyone's really buying into what we're doing. Everyone understands what we're doing, and everyone understands what their role is within that. And that's when you really have strong team organisation.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular non-negotiable behaviours or values that your players have to buy into?
I think honesty is one. And I don't, I mean honesty in terms of that self-awareness, being honest with yourself, what you've done well. Because you always need to pat yourself on the back, but at the same time, you need to be really honest with yourself and be aware of what you need to improve on and what you haven't done well. Because when you reflect honestly is when you can really, really start to develop as a person and as a player. I think when you're in environments where you spend a lot of time with each other, respect is also important. I think respect from players, from staff, no matter who the player is or who the staff member is. I think if you have that really good harmony amongst everyone, that's also really, really important. And I think that has to be in there. And I think maybe hard work and attitude, because at the end of the day, that hard work and attitude will beat talent. And I think when you're seeing our performance against Sweden, hard work was what got us that result. Yes, there was organisation there, and we did work on things. If the players aren't prepared to put in that hard work and have the right attitude in the build-up to that performance and during the performance, you're not going to see the results that we did get.
That's a really good point. For any coaches listening, how do you maintain that love for it, prevent any sort of burnout? Because when coaches are doing multiple teams, multiple sports, they have a lot going on, personal life. How do you prevent that burnout that maybe a lot of listeners might have maybe experienced or maybe close to gotten to that stage of burnout?
I haven't worked that out myself yet. It's difficult to switch off, but I think you need to find things. And one of the things that I think when I'm with my family, I think I tell myself to be present, because you can easily be there, but your mind is somewhere else. And I think that's one of the things, since taking on the additional workload as such, it is really important then that when I'm not there and I am with other people or with my family, it's about being present. And that does help you then to get that little bit of break and switch off and enjoy other parts of your life as well.
Is that the hardest part of coaching, is switching off, or is there anything else that kind of challenges you?
I think, yeah, I mean, it is probably one of the most difficult things. But coaching has all its talents. I think sometimes if coaches aren't, if they're putting these great plans in place and they're not seeing instant success, they can get frustrated. But that's definitely not the case. I think patience is something we all need to learn, especially as a coach. You must be patient and you must stick to the process, because otherwise you will get frustrated and you will get burnt out. But other than that, I think, keep educating yourself. Also, another really important one. We never know it all. But yeah, one of the most difficult, I would say, was definitely dealing with the burnout and the managing your time.
Mm-hmm. Why do you love it then? What's in it for you? What do you get the thrill of it from?
First of all, I love football. First of all, I love the game. And then after that, I personally love seeing, if it's with the 16s, I love seeing the development of an individual. I love seeing the development of a team building. How we see it go from player assessments to a final UEFA tournament at the end of the program. And I love seeing that development of the person, because I think at that age group of 15, 16 years of age, there's an awful lot going on for young people. And it's great to see how they're growing within that year. I think, and with the seniors, it's probably something a little bit different, because you are results based and you are more competitive, and obviously you want to see results. So it's fantastic for us when we see the hard work that we're putting together as players and staff, that we can get the results that we get against Sweden and create those memories and those experiences that we'll all share. But it's it is nice. It is nice to see hard work pay off, which is always quite rewarding.
When you talk about the development side of things and giving feedback, is there any particular way you like to structure feedback? Sometimes people have spoken about techniques they used or anything they've found helpful. Is there any particular way you like to do it, or is it just that eyeball to eyeball, honest, open conversation?
Oh yeah, it's got to be open and honest. So we'd always have with the underage players, we'd always have a couple of staff members in there, and the player coming in, we'd have a good chat, and we give the player the chance to talk first, and the player's aware of their role and the areas that we've been working on, and we get them to reflect, because we're always encouraging, they're constantly reflecting on their performances in training, in games. So a lot of the time, the players, their self-awareness is quite good. It's one of the components that you look at as an international player, is that they are able to do that. So yeah, generally the players are quite good, and they can reflect and they can understand, and we'll support them then within other areas, and we work within the profile of their position. So we would have a number of attributes and characteristics of a player, and we can discuss those individual components with the individual, and explain how some areas they may need to work a little bit harder, and how we feel they can do that, what they can utilize in their environments, their training environment, home environment, how we can do that. And I think you can't dress it up. You have got to be honest, but you've got to be compassionate as well. They still are young people, but that's the way, for me, the best way to do it is break it down, but support them in how they can do it. Don't just give them all this information and send them off. That you've got to explain, what can they do within their own environments to be better, and I think that's just as important.
Mm-hmm. When you're in that environment, do you focus more on the strengths or weaknesses of a team? And that's probably difficult, particularly if you're away at a tournament, a couple of games coming up. But what do you focus more on, your strengths or weaknesses?
I think, we're constantly trying to develop, constantly trying to improve. So we have to focus on where we need to do that, what areas we do need to improve on. You have to acknowledge your strengths. You have to play to your strengths. But it'd be very naive not to be aware of where you might be vulnerable, what weaknesses you might have. So it's always important that we do that. And again, it just comes back to the environments that we create. You constantly work on those brilliant basics. You constantly, repeating what you're good at, and developing that, and pushing that even further. But you're also creating an opportunity for them to be exposed to where they might need to improve, and highlighting that to the players.
Mm-hmm. With all the players you've seen, aside from physical ability, skill, what are the common traits that you see? Is there a pattern that you see amongst these elite players that you kind of say, oh God, they all have these similar traits? What do you think of that? What are the common traits you see of the best players?
The best players all have that trait of wanting to know more. They all want feedback. They all want to find out what they need to do to be a little bit be better, or what can they do to improve, or what can they bring back to their club with them. And that tends to be what we see with the group that we've had come through this year. A lot of them were so good in that area, and they were whenever we set tasks, they'd really got involved into their own performances, and highlighting these key areas. So I'd say that would be a big one for us.
What's more challenging, the under-16s or the senior?
Both challenging in their own way. Completely different environments with their own challenges. All good challenges. I mean, I couldn't say which was more challenging. It pulls on my own different skills and abilities to adapt to that different environment, really, and different challenges within those.
Is there any particular lesson you've learned from coaching over the years? Is there any, maybe particularly working with women, how do you find going into the female setup? Is there anything you've kind of noticed or observed between the difference in men and women? A lot of people have spoken about different traits that they have. Is there any particular observations you've made?
Obviously, look, you have to be you have to be conscious that you work within the female game. You have to be aware of how you deliver feedback, like we spoke about. But I think at the end of the day, coaching is coaching. How you communicate with people at the end of the day is the main thing. How you communicate your message. Your understanding of their different environments, just like in the men's game or the boys' game. All players are going to be from different backgrounds, different ethnicity, everything like that. And you have to be understanding of that first and foremost, of who they are, get an understanding for who they are, how they learn, and where they're coming from, and whether they're a male or a female, that remains the same. And then when it comes to coaching, and you develop an individual, you developing a team, that's coaching. I find that the girls are really, really open to feedback. I find that they do want to know more. And when you do discuss things with them, they learn very, very quickly.
Very good. Is there any particular advice you'd give to any novice coaches starting off, or coaches that want to jump from maybe a particular level to the elite level? Is there anything that you'd advise them on?
Yeah, just be patient. Just be patient and don't rush, because you see it now. There's some really good opportunities in the country, but I think good things come to those who wait at the same time, and don't be in a rush to get there. I think when I look back, I think it was almost 4 or 5 years between doing my B license and my A license, because I just wanted to make the most of the opportunities I had, and coach as much as I could, and learn as much as I could. And then when I felt I was ready, I'd progress on to my A license and so on. I think nowadays we're in a rush to get through the licenses and get into this top job, and that's okay for some, but I think the real benefits and the real rewards come when we just be patient with it and acknowledge all the learnings along the way.
Okay, interesting. If I held the key to every single football club in the world, or any sport, is there any particular team you'd love to go in and just kind of be a fly on the wall and watch for a week?
Yeah, Jordan's Chicago Bulls.
I'm actually rewatching The Last Dance at the moment, so that's so fitting.
Obviously watching the documentary is great, but if we're learning that much by watching the documentary, imagine what we don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Yeah.
Around that team.
Yeah. Would you ever look to other sports at all? As obviously you watch The Last Dance, but is there anything, maybe even from the football point of view, not just enjoyment or entertainment part, is there any other sports you'd look at and try to take ideas from?
I think even rugby. Rugby is a great sport. I love how rugby is really comes down to the onus is on the players. Players are given all the tools. They know what the objectives for the team are, how we're going to play. And I love how in rugby they assess the opponent and make decisions on how we're going to play our game. And I think that's one key area that in football, if we could do that quicker and better, that would definitely be to our advantage. So I enjoy watching that at times. I enjoy watching all sports, and I think I enjoy watching the behaviours of coaches and managers more so than anything, and seeing how they communicate with their players. That's always a key observation for myself.
Okay, very interesting. Is there any particular book recommendation you'd give to any of the listeners about coaching, or anything you've just found interesting or valuable?
So obviously Legacy is a great book about the New Zealand All Blacks. I not long read Phil Jackson's 11 Rings. It's a great book as well.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
But the most recent book I read was Carlo Ancelotti, Quiet Leadership. And it's a brilliant book. It says a lot about the man and how he's evolved as a person and as a coach, and some of his top tips along the way of how to engage with players and so on.
Okay, interesting. Out of interest, with leadership, particularly maybe with the younger age, how do you try? I guess leadership comes in different forms, and it's, leaders will kind of bring themselves to the forefront naturally. But how do you try to develop that leadership component, and maybe build up potential captains or maybe a leadership group within the team?
I I think leaders will always evolve. They're traits that people have within them. And and obviously you will always select a captain and so on. But I think what we look to try and do is create an environment where every player is a leader in their own way. I spoke earlier about how important communication is, and everyone must take responsibility for that. And I think you're always looking to see can everyone be a leader in their own way, because obviously leadership is done in different ways as well. You mentioned quiet leadership. You'll get people who do their talking by their performance on the pitch. You get others that are a little bit more vocal, and I think it's about getting that balance right. But you definitely do look for the attributes of a good leader, and if that's the person then that can lead your team, then great.
Overall, for you, in terms of all your coaching in all of sport, what would be your definition of success?
Definition of success. I think if, for example, the players that are coming through under 16, I think, if when I see them again when they're older and they're seniors and they still thank us for what we did with the group when they come through, that'd be great, because not all of them is going to be a professional footballer, and not all of them are going to play for the Ireland national team. But if they can acknowledge the time and the effort and what we look to try and do with them and the opportunities we gave them, if they could acknowledge that, I think that'd be a great reward.
When a player doesn't make it to the elite level, from what you've seen, how difficult is it to try and manage that from a coaching perspective? How do you keep them engaged in the sport? Because I know a couple of people maybe from different sports that have dropped out, when they were on that path to the elite level and didn't make it. How challenging is that, and how do you try and navigate that difficult time and path for the player?
Yeah, I think, well, when I was working at club level, it was all about giving them, new focus, and trying to help them enjoy the game if they were disappointed on how things had gone. You need to encourage them to love the game again and remember why they did want to play the game. And it's not to say that international football will never be there for them. It's just not an opportunity right now. But I think our club structures are getting better all the time. So there are environments where the players can go back into now, and they continue to enjoy the game. They continue to progress and develop. And I think that's really important as well. That they do have those structures to fall back on.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1: what is your favourite quote?
Cry in the beginning so you can smile in the end.
Okay, who said that?
I can't remember.
It's alright. Would you use quotes much with the players at all? That sounds like that's your go-to one.
It's one that we might use with them, just to get them to understand that it's not an easy path. It really is an easy path, and that's for players and coaches. There's going to be an awful lot of setbacks. So just understand that they're setbacks, and they'll only make you a little bit stronger.
Yeah, there's a great one. Failure is not a full stop; it's a comma. That's something I find really helpful when there's something's happening. You're like this is just a little blip, little stop, but you can keep going.
It is.
Yeah. Question 2: what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a coach/player.
Best sporting event. I think as a coach, it would probably be the Sweden game a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Fantastic memory for myself. And as a fan, Birmingham City getting promoted to the Premier League through the playoffs, that was one for me. And as a player, I was fortunate enough to score for Wexford Youths in their inaugural season, the first home game, and that was a memory that will always live for me. Yeah.
Brilliant. Out of interest, with that Sweden game, can you describe what the dressing room, what the journey home was like after that result?
Well, we were straight on the plane. I was straight back to a hotel at the airport because I was flying out to Malta the next day. So believe me when I say that we are all brought back down to reality quite quickly. But the euphoria of the build up to the event, the camp itself is the memory, and that's all part of it. And your memories with the staff and the players that you have during the week, and then it all comes together in a performance. And it's that initial feeling at the end of the whistle, when you've got a draw against one of the top ranked teams in the world. So it's that initial memory, and once the game's done and we're changed and we're fed, you're on to the next one then. But you'll always remember it. We're brought down to earth quite quickly.
Out of interest, what motivates you more as a coach? Is it that amazing performance, those positives, or is it a setback? Is it a challenge that kind of gets you up in the morning?
It's a good question. It's probably a bit of both, really. I think you do enjoy the challenge because it was, we talk all about then the growth mindset, and if you get comfortable in your comfort zone, you're not going to develop, you're not going to move forward. So you have to be challenged, you have to acknowledge challenges. So I do like that. So for example, we'll have a new group of players coming into us now June, July. We'll look to bring them through the under-16 program, and that's going to be a challenge. That'll be our challenge to different groups of players, different ability levels to what's just come through, and that will be for us then to work with the individual and build the team. So that'll be a good challenge to look forward to, and then with the seniors, every fixture we go into is a challenge, and we look forward to competing and pushing for World Cup qualification. And again, that's the challenge that gets you up and gets you ready. And that, I know I speak for myself and probably the rest of the staff and all the players when we say that is at the back of our minds with everything that we're doing at the moment.
Question 3: what's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
I think obviously I've applied for a number of jobs in the past. And you don't get those jobs, and you can react in one of two ways, and you can whinge and moan and sulk about it, or you can keep pushing on. And I think the initial feeling of that setback can be very disappointing, but you have to be positive and keep moving forward. And now I find myself in a better position than maybe any of those jobs would have had me in. So like you said, it's only a comma, not a full stop.
What's been the biggest achievement on or off the pitch for you?
Biggest achievement. I think probably getting my degree. I completed my master's degree in Belfast, so I never would have been a strong academic. So I think I was one of the first in my family to get a master's. So that was something, if you'd have asked me when I was in secondary school, would you go in? I never went to college after school. I went into an apprenticeship because education wasn't for me. But just how things changed. So the fact that I went back to Belfast and done that was fantastic. So I'm delighted that I have that now behind me. On the pitch, I think probably reaching the levels that I reached as a player was a massive achievement. I wasn't the greatest player or anything like that, but I always worked hard and I was honest and had a good attitude. And I think where I did progress to, for me, was a fantastic achievement.
Out of interest, looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I'll just do the same again. Do the same again, because all the mistakes you make, they're only small little hurdles and obstacles that you must maneuver around, and they're what have made me who I am today. If you don't have those experiences, I probably wouldn't be who I am, and and that'll probably help me to deal and manage with any future setbacks or things that might come around. So yeah, do the same again.
Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can open the table to a few people if you want.
Ooh. Favourite dinner guest? That's tough. That is tough. I think Ricky Gervais would be good. I do a lot of Ricky Gervais and keep us entertained. I'd love to chew the ears off Michael Jordan for a long time, listen to him.
I was just about to say, will Michael get a feature?
Definitely get a shout out. And then, tough one then. Maybe anyone else come and join us? I can't think.
It's okay. We'll stick with those two. Yeah. Final question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
That's something like new challenges. I think coming from the domestic league and moving to international football at underage, but then into senior as well, is they're definitely new challenges for me. So yeah, probably.
Fantastic. If there's any coaches listening that want to reach out or get in touch about anything we've discussed, or just looking for some advice, where's the best place to find you?
On Twitter. Anyone can reach out to you on Twitter. Absolutely, not a problem at all. Yeah, that's okay.
Tom, thanks a million for your time. Really enjoyed this. Wishing you all the best of luck with the 16s, with the seniors and everything and beyond. And thanks again for coming on.
Great. Thanks very much, Orla.
A massive thank you to Tom for joining me on the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I just want to wish him and the under 16 and the senior women's the very best of luck moving forward. If you are enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. A big thank you to Chin Up Goggles for sponsoring the coaching series, and thank you for listening.